like a phoenix from the ashes, the 706 podcast rises again. This is the 706 podcast where we take a movie, examine it, analyze it. Well, first we watch it, then we do all those things in discussion as a group, and then we vote. Is it one of the 706 greatest movies of all time? My name is Connor, and I'm here with my co-hosts, my co-movie fiends. Please introduce yourselves, guys.
My name is Tony.
I'm Anthony.
My name is Kirk. I just want to say I'm glad we're back. I'm glad to have Tony back. He was pulled away for a couple months while he was campaigning for Donald Trump in Ohio, but we're glad that he's back and we can resume the podcast.
So it's true indeed that the last time we've been on hiatus. When we decided we were doing the movie of this week, that is Battleship, things were very different in the country. We just recently elected a new president, that is President Donald Trump. Congrats, Donald. But enough about that.
Moving right along.
The movie for today is Battleship. This is a movie directed by Peter Berg, 2012, action movie of the alien invasion variety, based on the board game. You all know the board game Battleship. Somehow, it's a game that was played by children all over the world. It was not copyrighted. Somehow, it was taken over by Hasbro and made into an official plastic box set, an official game. And Peter Berg was given the task of making a blockbuster film out of it. People compared this immediately upon its very first trailers to the Transformers franchise. And that's something I'd like to draw out today, is the sort of relationship it has to Michael Bay and his style of filmmaking. Peter Berg is not Michael Bay. I don't want to confuse anybody there, even though a lot of people thought Michael Bay had something to do with this movie. He absolutely did not. But nevertheless, I think it carries some Bergian characteristics, but also carries some Bayian, the Bay-esque.
Bayesian.
The Bayesian. Yeah, Bayesian, which is something completely different. But yeah, very interesting. And I'll get to what the Bay-esque is in a moment. But please, guys, can I get your first impressions of this film?
Sure, yeah.
Was it a sinker?
No, here's something very interesting.
Did I sink your Battleship?
So Connor's put us in a super interesting position this week. So I was talking to Kirk not long after our last episode, and he told me, I'm kind of afraid to like Battleship. He doesn't like. He thinks like he said like if I like this movie, I'm putting it in my words now. Like I'll look like a dummy, basically being the sense I was getting. Like you
was
don't know.
this last week?
No, it was like after we did the last podcast.
Sure.
So you're like, I don't want to like this movie. And I was like, that's interesting. To me, I was in actually the opposite position. Because I was afraid to not like it. Because it's like, you're coming at it from this place of, hey guys, there's this movie no one likes. But I have this super cool, interesting reading. And whenever I hear that about a movie, whenever I hear there's some movie that like nobody likes, but is being reevaluated in some cool, interesting way, and I watch that movie, I always want to like it.
You don't want to be left out.
I always want to be on like the cool side where I'm like, yeah, actually, Tron Legacy is pretty baller. Like, I want to be that guy, right? So I come to this movie and I'm like, if I don't like it, I'm not going to have anything substantially different to say than the mainstream reviewers in 2012 who panned the movie. So I want to have something more nuanced or interesting. I want to have a take on this movie. So I felt kind of nervous in a different way when I set out to watch it. But at the end of the day, it is a movie. It's just a movie, and we can just watch it and take it for what it is.
Yeah.
And no, I don't think it's that good. I mean, there are things in it, like I think Peter Berg is talented, but to me, the movie is divided into two kinds of scenes. There are TV commercials and there are video game cutscenes. Those are the two types of scenes in this movie. There are a string of TV commercials in this movie. It is so ridiculous. The second half of this movie is just a string of like, aside from the action, all the scenes with the Navy people are like Navy recruitment ads. There's so much slow-mo, people like looking. There's a shot of Rihanna with like the water dripping down her face as she like looks towards the sky.
Yeah.
There's that bit on the boat where all the old Navy dudes, which judging from their acting are probably actual old Navy dudes.
Actual Navy sailors.
Okay,
that's
there
right.
we go. So, but I mean, it's nice they're in the movie, but again, it just feels so much like a Navy recruitment piece. In
Lots
that
of
part.
slow motion.
And it did actually remind me of parts of Battleship Potemkin, which is a pretty funny comparison, but it's kind of legit when you watch it. It's like, wow. Like when they're lifting the missile and they're carrying the 5,000-pound missile and there are like 4 dudes. I'm like,
Yeah.
wow, they're all,
500
1,000
pounds.
pound.
oh, I'm
thought
sorry,
it was
1,000
500.
I
pounds.
thought it was in tons.
It was 5,000.
It was heavy.
It was a really heavy missile.
Those are some strong,
carried by
strong
2
men.
few men, basically.
One of which is, and a few of them are like really old
Yes,
men
they're
too.
very
They're
accurate.
not in
old
the prime
dudes.
of their physical condition.
Yeah.
So there's that, and then so there's those scenes that feel like a TV commercial. Earlier scenes in the movie, there's like the comedic out scenes, and there's like the love scenes, and all these feel like commercials as well. They're scored to pop music. They're kind of montagey. There's this absurd set piece in the beginning of the movie about him stealing a chicken burrito.
Yeah, I'll get
which
to
is
that
like the
too.
inciting incident of the movie.
Yes.
And then to get to the video game cutscenes, the action in this movie. Look, it is very similar to Transformers. It is very Bay-esque, and it just does nothing for me. It's white noise. It's not as bad as those movies. Those movies to me are literally like almost unwatchable. This is a little more coherent for me. But the CGI, no reality to anything. Explosion after explosion after explosion. It's like explosions, if they're just unceasing, they cease to have any impact. And just the endless CGI, the totally removed from any kind of physical reality, just gives it no impact whatsoever. It's just so boring to watch. And like there are cool images and cool ideas. I think some of the alien designs are cool. I like some of the alien ships. I like when the aliens shoot that like Beyblade sort of thing.
Yeah.
That's
The
tearing
roller
things
ball,
up.
yeah.
That thing is cool. I like that a lot. And I like the shot where Taylor Kitsch and the other guy, come on, give me a second. Kirk's giving me this death stare. And they're sitting on the front of the ship and they're sniping away. That was a cool shot, but it's again just nullified for me by just the fact that like it looks so fake. There's no like reality to any
Hold,
of it.
stop. So when you say fake, do you mean the ships? Do you mean the water? The
It's just
appearance
like
of
the
world? Or are you
look-
talking about the explosions?
So
the
when they're on the
spaceships?
front of the ship, it's just the lighting and just the
Lighting,
colors
the
and the
lens
explosions
flare.
around them. It just does not look. I'm not watching human beings in a real space. That's my feeling. It's just it looks like a CGI cutscene. I know I've been talking for a while. I'll
let's
pass
move
the
on
torch.
to
But those were my
Anthony.
thoughts.
Okay.
On Battleship.
Sure. Well, I picked this movie actually last time over Thief,
Yes.
which was Tony's nomination, and I honestly don't remember what Kirk nominated.
Castaway.
Castaway. Sure. So I don't think this is a good movie. I enjoyed watching it for precisely the reason actually Tony hated it. I don't mind that the set pieces were completely fake to me. I took it all in as sort of this trashy white noise that I enjoyed watching. I didn't have Connor's reading in my head, but what I instead I really enjoyed kind of seeing was this like anti-millennial sentiment just throughout the whole movie. It was really fascinating, especially at the end, which I want to ask Connor about later. But also, this movie comes out in 2012, and it is just the perfect example of a movie completely made to be consumed on an iPad or iPhone. The color, the tone are perfect for the iPhone to capture in a way that like on the TV that which we watched it on, it just seems kind of weird and like off of it.
Yeah.
No, I enjoyed that aspect. Michael Bay-esque, sure. This movie went by pretty quickly for me, I'll say. The first act, though, I thought was really fascinating because it's essentially every type of movie you could think of cut into like these 2-minute segments. We get this weird chicken burrito scene that Tony talked about with Pink Panther music set to it. Yeah. And then we get this sort of quick cut to a romantic comedy, then to a sports film, and all of a sudden we're in a Navy recruitment ad again. I thought that was like really interesting. I think the part that
postmodern.
The part that doesn't really work is the fact that these aliens just are like meaningless. And I think actually Taylor, meaningless in the sense of just like, what are they doing here? There's no like aspect other than being just simple invaders, which sure it fits into the sort of formulaic movie Connor talked about. But I just need something else there. And the other fact I think is kind of off with this is Taylor Kitsch just doesn't. He's so bland in it that I feel like if you had a certain type of right blandness, it would actually carry the movie better. I don't know if that makes sense.
Sure, no.
But I mean, that's just what I was thinking.
Bland sort of role to fill.
Yeah. I mean, there's certain actors who just do that weirdly well.
Mm-hmm.
And he doesn't do it for me here, but...
Well, yeah, in 2012, they were really pushing Taylor Kitsch as, like, the next thing. It was this and John Carter, both of which, like, were total bombs. So Taylor Kitsch is basically over now.
Well, I mean, it's important, I guess, to note that he was, a huge deal with Friday Night Lights,
Yes.
and, various other little things. He was
which
really
Berg directed.
Really?
Yes, which Berg directed. Peter Berg directed Friday Night Lights. Lone Survivor was the recent one. His most recent one is Deepwater Horizon. I'll get to that. The Bergian cinema in a moment, but I will draw those larger themes for you, Anthony, if you allow me.
Sure.
Well, let's show you the context, the meaning of the aliens. Go ahead, Kirk.
Sure. This movie, I mean, Connor is the gentleman who brought to the table A Woman Under the Influence. What was
Hidden Fortress,
Little Big Man, Hidden Fortress, and then there was one I quite liked recently, but I forget the name. Probably have to go look back at
True
it.
Romance, Shaun of the Dead.
True Romance, all very good.
The Dustin Hoffman Western.
I did not consider this part of that class.
Out of left field.
This was pretty trashy. The closest I'd come to this movie is actually watching a video game review of the game that was based on the movie, which is based on a board game. And so I don't know. I think it was. I'm trying to look for bright spots. Not seeing
There were a lot of bright spots. The lens flare.
The J.J. Abrams-esque.
No, I didn't know that Peter Berg is the guy who directed Lone Survivor, Deepwater Horizon, and his next movie coming out is Patriots Day. So this guy likes to wrap himself in the flag. He's this propagandistic, kind of character in Hollywood, and so he appeals to a certain audience, and he gets he sells tickets that way. I think it's almost a little manipulative in this movie.
A little bit.
Yeah, I think it's and it's I think what else is manipulative is the Liam Neeson act. He's not seen after the first 20 minutes and before the last 10. So
easy paycheck.
He was a little bit of
the Liam Neeson billing
bear bait there. This movie, it kind of played weird. Like, one thing I really noticed is how it plays with time. Like, you'd think it would flesh out certain elements more, and then it just cuts right away to what they're talking about. Like, at the end, there's no real kind of letdown from the climax. There's like this big, huge climactic end, and then like a cut away, they go to like the awards ceremony where they're handing out medals. So I thought it was interesting there. It just felt off, like in my action movie kind of, big epic frame. It just felt like a weird twinge to it. But I didn't really find much to enjoy in this movie. There was this one guy who was yelling shit, and Tony and I were laughing because it was some of the most hilarious narration you'll ever hear.
There's one featured extra who was just losing his mind. It cuts back to him like 5 times. He's just yelling more stuff.
What is that shit?
And that was great.
What if I told you that was Peter Berg himself?
Was it really?
I'm not sure.
Oh, okay.
Peter Berg acts in a lot of stuff. He's in Collateral and a number of other movies. So
he did do Collateral.
He loves making cameos in his own movies.
Oh, he's in it. Right?
Yeah, Michael Mann in Collateral.
Oh, yeah.
Let's not conflate Michael Mann and Peter Berg.
No. Yeah,
especially after last time.
Two of the same sensibilities.
Okay. If you made your
I'm
point,
good,
Kirk, you're good.
For now.
Okay, thank you guys for your reactions. There's a lot to talk about. I'll say this. Upon watching it again, when I first watched this movie, I thought of it as, yes, trashy, propagandistic, but I found myself, in spite of my awareness of its propagandistic nature, getting very into it and getting into the story. I couldn't quite explain why, and I thought that was due to its somehow remarkable the cinematic talents of Peter Berg. I can't quite say that now, because when you watched again, I think what all of us, even if we didn't mention it, I think Kirk just mentioned it, was the sense of the editing and the timing and these little kind of vignettes and the sense of a stiltedness, of a disconnect between the different parts of the movie. You find that, and I think that's a problem of editing. I think if he had at least kept the music playing from one scene to another, but oftentimes you get music starts up, dun 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 dun, and then it immediately cuts off, and then it's a new scene.
And there are literally lines of dialogue that are like clipped off.
Yeah. So I think there was an editing problem with this movie that I did not notice the first time I watched it.
I'm actually going to say it's not an editing problem.
You
That
don't
the
think
way
it's
the
an
movie
editing
is
problem?
actually meant to be consumed is literally in 15-minute increments on a cell phone while you're riding the subway.
Interesting, very interesting.
This is a movie for me.
Very
That's why I put up and make macaroni and cheese.
But no, this movie came out in 2012 as sort of that really becomes huge. Like Google Play introduces itself,
Yes.
YouTube Rent, on and on these little services, Amazon, where you could actually watch the movie after just the initial download.
Right.
Yeah.
And I do want to mention that too. Anthony raised a great point about the colors, the sort of the visual look of the movie. This is the thing that I thought was actually one of the strongest things about the movie. I still thought was very strong about the movie. And this is how one of my central tenets of how it masters the Bay-esque, or how it out-bays Bay himself. That it actually, Michael Bay. Let's describe what Bay-esque is. I have an image that I think kind of captures Michael
And this
Bay.
is not B-A-E in the modern sense. It's B-A-Y.
Yeah. So Bay is Bay, or however you'd like to say it.
Michael Bay is Bay.
So imagine, if you will, a ruined cityscape, kind of brown, bright blue sky, standing behind it, right, as a backdrop, and then suddenly you see hurtling through the air a kind of football player-shaped male thing that hurtles through the air and says, "Oh yeah!" And then it sort of zooms past the camera, out of sight, around the corner, past a skyscraper, perhaps a building falls over, and then we cut, or at least pan down, to a beautiful woman with a smudge of dirt on her face, looking up, kind of admiringly. That, I think, is like the Michael Bay sort of image. To me, is the quintessential Michael Bay image. It has a sort of its masculinity as a part of it. Not to say conservative values exactly. A certain kind of lurid color scheme. Often it's a contrast of like blue and browns, grays,
colors.
orange. A lot of primary colors. And kind of everything is suffused with this kind of light, this digital light that we think of it as lens flare, but it's more than just lens flare. It's supposed to be like camera artifacts, the scintillating sort of shining effect. Berg does not use that in his other movies. He uses it in this movie, and he's obviously working upon the influence of Michael Bay. He was trying to capture something here, and he adds to that. He uses that. I think he avoids the dull color palette of a lot of Michael Bay's stuff. He makes it super. I mean, the Hawaii looks like it's like a toy island. I can imagine the play set. It's beautiful, and there's some really good shots in it, I think, in general. In general, the sea, I thought, was used very well. There's a very vivid, bright blue sea. I think sold and fulfilled kind of the fantasy of being on a battleship, which is kind of what this whole movie is about. And let's again give him huge credit, although he was not the writer of this movie. The writers are the Hober brothers. You can look them up. The Hober brothers, and I think with Berg's guidance, managed to weave all of this, a board game into a story that I think really kind of works. I mean, it couldn't have worked in any other way, but this was the one way it could have worked, I think. Because not only does he make it, what's an alternative? What's an alternative adaptation of Battleship? What was genius was he placed it right. We need a fantasy. He needs to fulfill our fantasy of battleships. So he needs to set it right, modern day, Sure, the Pacific, has it take place in this context of the Rim Pact, a real thing that happens of these naval exercises between nations that captures the essence of the idea of game and war game, right? And then that itself leads to the alien invasion, and he actually manages to work in the mechanics of the game Battleship, sort of an altered form, into the movie itself, in this kind of memorable sequence about tsunami buoys and stuff like that. I think it's just really interesting how he managed to weave that in. But running through all of it is this idea of kind of, it's sort of lighthearted tale of kind of a wastoid who sort of learns sort of virtue and respect for tradition. I think that's what the story is. In the face of adversity, which is mentioned at the very beginning. Adversity is what makes you into this thing. So I thought that it had a pretty clear idea. It's a lighthearted treatment of it. But I think it captures something interesting and managed to weave together all these things. The worship of World War II. Again, it's taking cues from Independence Day, a movie where the 4th of July, Independence Day, is this American phenomenon that's now extended to the entire world. This is kind of, you could also call this movie Pearl Harbor Day. It's kind of like Pearl Harbor extended to the entire world, right? So it's kind of taking this American mythology that has to do with war, but it's giving a lighthearted spin on it. And I think it's cathartic, and I think it's fun, and I think it's propagandistic, but that should not stop us, because all movies, even the idea of a movie that tries not to be propagandistic can be just as propagandistic in a way.
It's really interesting, propagandistic, you say, and again, Battleship 10, for example, Independence Day, all these things. Yeah. Although Independence Day actually
not really
different, but no. So
also Starship Troopers. I think Starship Troopers is an influence.
Okay, but on that note, I think it's very interesting that this is an alien invasion movie. That you would make the Battleship game into an alien invasion scenario as opposed to an actual war scenario. So I just wonder what your take is on it. You said this is the only way they could do it. What do you think they were thinking when doing it like that?
The game context, it's difficult. I mean, I think it doesn't quite relate, like literally to the plot, that it didn't have to take place during the Rim Pact, but I think it captures the sense of the fact that these are exercises, the fact that it's a game, also feeds into the fact that our character Hopper, is so cocky to begin with, and he's in it to win the game. It starts out as trying to win the game, and then it turns into this situation that's much more real, and he suddenly has to take on real responsibility. He's not just playing a game anymore, right? As we see when he's playing sports, he's playing soccer match against the Japanese naval team at the beginning of the movie, where he's a total jerk and he won't ever take one for the team. He has to be the hero all the time, right? And that's the thing that ends up coming back. But again, also the Rim Pact setting gives the opportunity for this multiculturalism of these, can't quite call it that, but it's a sort of rivalry between the Japanese captain Nagata and Hopper. They have an interesting relationship. And I think it's a movie that actually respects this Japanese character, which I thought was kind of cool. I was impressed by, and sort of it filled me with some kind of patriotic feeling in a way when I watched it. But
I don't know. I'm just thinking back on the acting. This was so horribly acted. It's really just a shame. These are like all they basically. They must have gone recruiting at like an AA meeting in Chino Hills and found and called Rihanna up, and she was playing at the nearby what do you call it, convention center. And so I found it that to kind of pull me out of any sort of suspension of disbelief.
It's a bit kitschy.
Yeah. And I wonder, is this a movie? Is it an allegory for illegal immigration? Let's think about that.
I think. Oh, go on.
Go ahead. Oh, I was going to say, I think actually, though, to go along with what Connor was saying, is we should keep in mind who this movie is asking us to be as we watch it. And I think it's really interesting that the first act, for me, ended as soon as he sees this young 12-year-old boy, and he tells him about his duty. He's on the destroyer ship, the battleship that actually will save us at the end of the day. is a museum to begin with. It's something kind of
Right.
boring from this
He's cocky,
young boy's perspective as seen by his delight about hearing the destroyer.
Uh-huh.
And what do we see throughout the movie? Or like we keep seeing these sort of 12-year-old boys and like these like things that we would, you know, typically believe that they're enjoying, you know, a little league baseball game, we see soccer being played.
Uh-huh.
You know, I mean, this is all sort of just a young like male fantasy that's being played out. Like the Navy's exciting, it doesn't seem too threatening. Even if
Right.
the brother is lost, that doesn't really hit. It's a. I mean, I don't think that's a compliment to the movie. I just think it's part of the movie.
Well, it's kind of a Navy's presented in just a very wholesome, kind of uncomplicated terms. I mean, and yeah, in any movie like this, you're going to have casualties. You know, they're going to have heroic
Well, there has to
deaths
be, yes.
And the alien invasion thing, I think, to go back to that real quick, I think they were just trying to remove any. They thought about different scenarios, and they're like, "What is the least political we can
Right.
do?" And
Yeah.
the alien invasion is the most kind of politically neutral situation.
It's an attempt to remove any nuance and the idea, any sort of culpability in the
violence.
exercise of war.
Yeah.
Because I mean, you know, enlisting the help of the veterans and everything. I mean, thinking of, you know, this in such a whitewashed kind of very digestible way, war and its kind of its after effects and all its glory without considering its ramifications and kind of enshrining that. I thought the alien choice was kind of an easy one. I mean, if they had chosen to go with, say, North Korea or something, I don't know if he would have been able to pull off his message as effectively. So I think it was a way for everybody to be able to kind of get behind it, and I think that's kind of characteristic of many, you know, alien invasion or excursion movies. You know, I'm thinking of like Ridley Scott's Alien or Attack from Mars or obviously Independence Day. So.
Easy enemy, right?
Yeah, right.
Absolves
Faceless.
Well, it's like how so many video games you're killing zombies. It's like they're not people anymore.
Right.
You have no guilt.
Peter Berg made an interesting statement about the aliens where he said that I take my cues from Stephen Hawking, who said, if we ever find, I am absolutely certain that there is intelligent life like ours out there, but we should by no means attempt to contact them. And so basically, Berg apparently had this this expression of some kind of cynicism about the idea of people who are like us. If we found creatures who are like us, and that's actually very much emphasized at the beginning of the movie, the fact that they're like us. They exist in like a fourth planet from the sun, that kind of scenario,
planet,
the Goldilocks planet. They're very like us, and in fact, they look a lot like us. You know, they may have they have 5 fingers, 2 thumbs, right? But and they have different. You know, they can't see as well, but they're a lot like us. They're recognizably like us, and it's interesting that they're not actually just all destroying, all consuming killers. They basically are attempting to contact their home planet. They're just trying to escape, really. In fact, they're not extremely culpable in this movie. The reason that they come to Earth is kind of mysterious, but the most of it's spent. It's that the aliens are trying to get out of there. But it's interesting. So I think it wasn't quite the stereotype of the alien that you might expect. But what does that say otherwise? I'm not sure. Maybe it's just sort of for plot reasons. The aliens don't, for instance, kill people they don't think are threats. You know, they leave them be. Yeah, I don't know.
I actually kind of like that the movie again doesn't really even gesture in the direction of the reason for the aliens coming.
Yeah.
It's just sort of like they want to destroy us, they're hostile, and I actually kind of like that because it feels almost like if this were to really happen, not that this by any means a realistic movie, like we really wouldn't know. There'd be no way to really communicate with them. It would just be like if they were hostile, that's all. That's the only meaningful information we would really have is they're hostile and we're in this situation. We don't know what to do. And the fact the movie doesn't bend over backwards to like find a thing like they need to find the 6 runes, you know, like I kind of appreciated that. It kind of added to it made it a little more concise and just like look, no one. really cares about that. It's an excuse for us to have this war scenario, excuse for us to have the Battleship story, and we can just leave it at that. And I can kind of respect that a little bit. I feel like a lot of other movies would try to have a scene where they like talk about their motivations, and it wouldn't necessarily be necessary. But
Right.
What do you guys see as this movie's analog? Like, what's the most direct comparison for you, or either for better or worse?
In terms of other movies?
Yeah.
I mean, I just think of again, Battle LA, which comes up when you look it up on Amazon Video, which if you remember that movie is so bad. That's one of the worst movies I've ever seen. The Transformers movies are also terrible. Honestly, of the other movies I would compare this to, this is one of the better ones, I would say. I at least found it, fitfully amusing, I'm trying to think of a really great version of Battleship.
For some reason, I had what is it? Hunt for Red October in my head. Sean Connery, Alec Baldwin. I don't know why. Probably just because it's like a
nautical.
Nautical. But
Das Boot. You've seen that movie?
Yes. Yeah. No. I really did enjoy some elements of kind of the gamesmanship of it, and I think that Berg set the stage for that to exist, so I can appreciate that. It was kind of tantalizing to the eyes, I think. I liked what you said about, it being kind of, you'd be able to enjoy this on, a very small screen. You'd be able to.
Do you intend to do that soon?
Very well said.
Do you plan on doing that soon?
Completely changed his mind.
Say, I'm going to watch the trailer on YouTube tonight in 480p. Highly artifacted.
I'm really curious on that trailer what the like to dislike ratio is and what the comments are like. Are people really into it, or I don't know.
Some people do. There's an interesting. I've done a lot of research now on Battleship. I've had a lot of time. Interesting things about Battleship. You'll find these interviews with Peter Berg that I'm mentioning are buried deep in YouTube. They're very poorly edited. They're clearly throwaway, given to the interns, kind of interviews. And my favorite discovery so far has been there's the Battleship novelization. The novel of the movie of the board game, which actually has an amazing and very respectful and very interesting positive review on Amazon. It's definitely
just one
worth a read. Yeah, I think maybe two. Maybe
what if it's amazing? What if it's an incredible book?
Some call it the Ulysses, the 21st century.
It's just a very respectful, whoever wrote was like, I like to read books like these, and it was good.
I think there's a video where the video game guy on YouTube, Super Bunny Hop, just reads video game novelizations and talks about them. So it's a whole world. There are so many of these throwaway books. But
as a side note, can we think of the board team that was trying to figure out what movie to finance, and they were like, well, let's just adapt Battleship. And we'll throw Rihanna in there. We'll get Brooklyn Decker.
It's a fascinating question.
It's just you could see the piece by piece adding up.
Oh,
to
I would
equal
love
C.
to be in the room when they first pitched, when they first thought, okay, we gotta make a Battleship movie.
Yeah,
that's the story, right? No. James Cameron walked in.
Okay. He wrote Battleship, wrote a P, and then made it a pound sign.
Well, we said last time that he wrote Battleship Potemkin, then erased the Potemkin, and then the dollar sign. I was about to say. So Peter Berg. Let me make one final remark about Peter Berg. So his oeuvre is interest in working class white men, usually who are a bit morally ambiguous and kind of ending up falling on the side of right. They usually have some instinct for rightness that shines true in the face of adversity. They manage to show their rightness, their righteousness. That's very typical. And he's into serious movies. He's into movies that portray kind of masculine cultures. He describes himself as an anthropological, sociological filmmaker. He likes the jargon of different kind of, not his words, but manly sort of groups like the military. Lone Survivor is all about, it's the Rangers, right, or the Marines, I'm forgetting. But this is not his proudest moment, I don't think. Battleship, but I think it's actually one of his most successful. I won't say more successful than Friday Night Lights. I do respect that movie more than this probably. As a movie, as a story he wanted to tell. I do respect this though, in terms of its filmmaking. Honestly, even more than Lone Survivor, which is a movie that tries to take the sense of the realistic war narrative, Saving Private Ryan, that sort of thing. He brings his visual flair to it, but he makes it into this hyper simplistic, slow-mo sort of killing spree that does not recognize any kind of nuance and actually kind of defeats the purpose of the movie he was trying to make, which tried to show that there's nuance in the conflict in Afghanistan. So this was a case where his flair and his sense and also some of his values came through in a way that was lighthearted enough and with enough flair that I think it ended up being kind of actually a much more palatable and functional movie overall. So
okay. So we're getting short on. We're around 35 minutes, but you did mention earlier that you had. We never talked about that chicken burrito scene, and you said you had. We'll get back to it. So I want to hear what your take is on that.
Okay, so that scene was. I mean, that's the one that I forgot about when I pitched the movie, but it's essentially a shameless nod to like what was in that like 1 week of the filming of the movie, like a viral sensation. I don't know if you remember this, like a guy like climbing into a store, or like a shopping mall, or like a Walmart or something, breaking into a Walmart, and they had the security footage of him falling. But it's an interesting image again because it's so they were just it's shameless homage to that, and you see similar things in Transformers. I think you'll see a million movies from around that time that have "Don't Tase Me, Bro." I'm glad they resisted the "Don't Tase Me, Bro" in this one because he does get tased. It's an interesting moment, right? The long hair, the kind of the wastoid who does this silly thing, becoming an object of ridicule for us normal Americans. But at the same time, he endures the kind of the pain of being punished by authority, which we're supposed to, I think, as audience members have respect for. But then, nevertheless, this chicken burrito that he's getting, and who knows where I don't know where the chicken burrito comes from, honestly. The chicken burrito is this thing of it actually does show his willingness to go to great lengths. It shows his kind of inner potential for good, even if he's going to humiliate himself. So that was interesting. But
I think that's so perfect that's where the scene comes from, just because the fact that Rihanna's in it.
Yeah,
and then Brooklyn Decker is another, quick viral sensation for 6 months.
Really?
She was a Sports Illustrated model.
Is that the love interest?
The blonde hair. Yeah.
No,
she was on the cover.
Very much of its time.
Yeah,
girl of the month.
Like, the Kate Upton of that year.
What'll get the kids in the seats?
Yeah,
the kids.
The kids. I mean, children.
Yeah.
All right, so we're at like 37 and a half minutes.
All right, so let's proceed to the voting, guys. I think I know where this is going. Hopefully, we're going to get a white surge, like we did with a certain other recent election. A white male surge, let's say. Okay, go ahead.
I just one thing I was thinking about while you guys were talking is this movie is authentically un-Hawaiian within the context of colonization, and it's quite interesting. It's quite ironic.
Yep, they were lays. I'm sorry. One more thing, guys. Mahalo, mother.
Yeah,
right?
That happens twice. There's two mother.
Yeah, but no, mahalo by the way means thank you. You can say thank you, and it doesn't mean goodbye. It means thank you. So it's interesting. So it's like kind of saying thank you for being my enemy in a way.
Thank you for letting me destroy you.
Well, thank you for letting me be the man.
I'm sorry for interrupting.
No, that's all right. They could still have kept the integrity of the PG-13 rating with at least one of those, but
I don't know. I think when you say put mother in front of it, it becomes like a.
Oh, it does?
Is it one of those
so like when you're on like a podcast rating system and you say motherfucker, like does that...
It's a times two
multiplier. I think it's if you use it in a sexual context,
I see.
And then you add an ER at the end, it becomes sexual, so that makes it R-rated.
A sexual fuck
as opposed to an exclamation, right?
Yeah.
Alright, well...
Wait, so this is rated PG-13, right?
Of course. They're not making R-rated.
Alright, well thanks for allowing me to talk, but I will just say for the the people transcribing this episode out here. Here's your quote: "Pacific Rim job. I will not be voting this in. It's a no."
So there's a scene towards the end of this movie where Taylor Kitsch asks Liam Neeson for permission to marry his daughter. And I'm going to say what Liam Neeson said to him. No. No means no.
No.
Not the let's go to the have a chicken burrito.
There's nothing else.
Nothing like that?
Nothing,
Okay.
nothing like that.
Well, I can't say I'm shocked.
Across the board.
But thank you guys. You brought your wits and your magnanimous film intellects to the table. I'm glad to have that. Yep,
right.
it's trying to think of a pun. It's a sinker, I guess. So
You sunk my battleship.
you sunk my battleship. Pretty sneaky, sis. Okay, let's go on to this next segment where you guys suggest a movie and I get to choose, make an executive decision.
And Tony gets to decide the order. It's
I don't care.
Last to
I'll go first.
Go
you guys
first,
know
Tony.
my order.
Yes, please.
Sure.
What's your movie?
My movie is an experimental animated film. We still haven't had an animated film get in. What are you looking like me for?
I'm not looking
He
at
like
you
rolled
for
his
You're
eyes.
just
movie
confusing
itself.
our audience.
I
Keep
guess-
going.
I'm wondering how much this will pander to Connor. Go ahead.
I don't think it does really at all. But
Let's
okay,
see.
fine. So we wanted to get an animated movie, and Anthony tried Beauty and the Beast and didn't get in. So I'm trying to do a different one, which is a very different animated movie. It's called It's Such a Beautiful Day. It's by Don Hertzfeldt. It's also from 2012. One of my favorite movies of that year, though I saw it after I made the list, which I regret. But it's super interesting and cool and beautiful and distinctive, and I think I haven't really seen anything else
What's
like
it
it.
called?
It's Such a Beautiful Day.
Oh, okay.
And it's pretty short. It's on Netflix, and I think it'd be a change of pace.
All
Is
right.
it better than Up?
I didn't quite give him 5.
Let's not get on Pixar. We don't have enough time for Pixar. Let's go ahead, Anthony.
Well, after this one, I felt a bit limited / quickly changed my mind of what I want to do, but it's the month of November, and right now TCM is running a classic little celebration called Norvember, and I thought in honor of TCM, I would like to nominate a more modern rendition of it. 2005's parody of, Nor tropes, Shane Black's Kiss Kiss Bang Bang, starring Robert Downey Jr. and Michelle Monaghan. It's I think a really great movie. I think it's much better than what is it? The other guys, the nice guys.
You saw The Nice Guys?
Yeah, the Ryan Gosling
You
one.
didn't like it?
No, it was okay.
Oh, come on.
Anyway,
That's a great movie.
anyway, this is, I think, Shane Black's at the height of his game. It's everything that people praise about him, just perfectly done. Robert Downey Jr., I think, his best role in the last since the 2000s. But I could get a little bit more in the rebuttal section.
All right. I'm listening.
Okay.
The gears are cranking, Kirk.
Interesting. Yes, my choice is a socially conscious movie. It's based on a true story. It's called North Country. I actually own this movie. Quite a fan of it. North Country. Have any of you seen this movie?
Never heard of it.
Okay, so North Country is 2005, starring Charlize Theron. Ouch, as I hit my head. It's about a landmark class action lawsuit. First class action lawsuit against employers' sexual harassment. The case is called Jensen versus Evelyn Mines. It's about a small town in northern Minnesota where a mine company, and then they some very sexist, very kind of unspeakable policies toward their female employees. It's starring Charlize Theron, Frances McDormand, Minnesota. I mean, you got to think of her.
Right.
Sean Bean as well. Best
Oh, boy.
Minnesotan actor ever. Woody
I
Harrelson.
know he's gonna die. in that
Jeremy
movie.
Renner, Richard, what is that guy's name? Richard Jenkins. Yes, Richard Jenkins, Sissy Spacek. So it's a pretty prolific
quite a
cast.
cast.
That's actually a very good cast. He said, I guarantee mine was the best cast, and I think it legit does.
That sounds like
It's
an
great.
Oscar, nominations across the board type movie.
No, it's very, very powerful. It's almost hard to watch at times. I think it's very relevant given kind of climate we're in right now with Mr. Pussy Grabber.
It's pretty cold. It's pretty
headed
cold. You
towards
mean?
DC.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
Very
Yeah.
nice.
Yeah. Go ahead with the rebuttals.
Sure. I would like to see Kiss Kiss Bang Bang. I don't appreciate the shade being thrown at the nice guys, which you should all watch. I mean, it sounds really enjoyable. And always makes fun of me for saying my movie's different, but I legitimately think my movie is there's no real analog in anything we've done in the past. I think there are a few movies we've done that are sort of in the vein of what Anthony's talking about, like True Romance more recently that I could think of. I think mine legitimately there's no other movie we've done that's like it. It's short, so it'll be easy to do another episode. And it's I just really, really like it. Whenever I suggest a movie, it's a movie that I really, really like. So I guess that doesn't really distinguish this one, but I just want to watch it a lot. As for North Country, I have not seen it and I know nothing about it. So bear in mind I'm being totally unfair and stupid right now, but I think based on everything you've said, it has the potential to be sort of middle brow, sort of like eye-rolling on the nose, sort of like Oscar baity speeches about how sexism is bad. Maybe it's great. I'm just saying I can imagine a version of the movie like that, and I'm not that interested in it.
The body of lies.
And there's a bit of body of lies smell I'm getting. He's talked in very similar terms about that movie.
Very insightful in that.
I said I'm being unfair. I'm totally
quite unfair there. Those are all right opinions. All right, go ahead.
Sure. One, I mean, I haven't seen either of these movies, so I can't give an honest opinion about why. I don't think those movies are the right choice exactly. But one, I don't think Kiss Kiss Bang Bang is at all similar to a True Romance, as Tony was saying. I think Kiss Kiss Bang Bang, which stars Robert Downey Jr. as a small-time crook who accidentally stumbles upon an audition for a movie, ends up in Hollywood, and quickly the movie becomes an amazing comedic look at the sort of roles and types that Hollywood casts upon people. Val Kilmer plays this amazing homosexual private investigator who's used just to kind of poke fun at how easily Hollywood is able to take those certain types of actors and push them to the side for their own amusement. It's just hilarious from start to finish. I think it is legitimately a great performance from Robert Downey Jr. I think it's a fun movie to watch. Kirk's I'm interested in. Tony's I'm sure I'd love to see it on Netflix someday, but I think this is the right choice to go with.
Okay.
Kirk.
So I years gone a little with the weather changing. Years go as well. I was curious. Your movie, actually, no, your movie. It was a Peter Berg inspirational movie. My Kiss with Michael Bay. What was it actually called? I didn't even hear it. It was okay.
That's his.
Okay,
Mine's Kiss Kiss Bang Bang. Yeah.
And then your movie is about is really interesting, insightful, Viceland. Piece about this Beijing Orthodox Judaist kind of cell called Briss Wang Wang. Really excited to see that one.
For his movie.
I did yours.
This doesn't sound anything like mine.
Really? What's Bay Day? What's
All
the
right,
name of your
all right.
movie?
Let's move on.
What was the title to your movie, though?
It's Such a Beautiful Day.
Okay, there we go.
Okay.
I'll take
Michael
that.
Bay.
You know what?
All right, fair enough. I'm sorry.
I think my movie's quite good. I respect both of my competitors' choices, and I won't make unfounded bullshit accusations against some person in this room right now. I'll just let it be. So.
All right, so here's my issue. I think Tony's not bringing his rebuttal game right now, and you're not. I think because you're afraid of spoiling the movie, you're not giving me enough information.
I see what you're saying.
What is
I
about?
always err on the side of not saying that. Okay,
yes.
So I said it's experimental. So it's very sort of. There are basically it's like three kind of short films in one. Again, it's like just over an hour long, and there are these three kind of short animated. Don Hertzfeld did. You've seen Rejected. There's a YouTube. It's like a series of supposedly rejected short cartoons that didn't air on TV. They're funny and surreal, and they get increasingly kind of weird and violent. But they're pretty lighthearted and like ultimately pretty fun. Like people on the internet like them a lot. He sort of developed this kind of cult following. He did a movie last year I recommended called World of Tomorrow, which is a short film that played at Sundance that was like beloved, nominated for Best Short Animated Feature. But basically these shorts, the three shorts within It's Such a Beautiful Day, they're all like about life. and they're sort of weird. They're kind of like almost like a Terrence Malick-y feel, sort of like not really. Just it's sort of like a little Charlie Kaufman in there. It's just like a lot. I know I'm name dropping, but it's just like.
A little bit of
I'm
Jesus
just trying
Christ.
No, I
Exodus.
applied my logic to your logic to what you're saying right now.
I'm just saying he's asking me to. I said what I was comfortable saying. He's asking me to describe. I'm describing it as best I can without outright spoiling.
Can I ask you a
anything.
question? Is this sort of like a thing like the Adult Swim fan base would be really into?
Perhaps, but it's not like a really irreverent, like
12-ounce
ironic.
mouse.
I wouldn't call it like an ironic or like irreverent or gross or anything. It's not like Tim and Eric. I mean, it's more like the closest thing I compare it to is Synecdoche, New York. That's the closest thing I can compare it to. I'm just saying that's the movie I think of when I watch it.
Closest thing I can compare Battleship to is the Sistine Chapel.
Maybe it is. I don't know.
Okay. I gotta say, though Anthony's rebuttal, he made his movie a lot more appealing. I'm just not feeling it right now. I'm sorry, Anthony, and that does not have to do with the fact that we've been passing back and forth for a while. It does not have to do with that at all. I'm gonna eliminate you, Anthony. Sorry. Very sad. As for, it's a toss-up right now between Kirk and Tony. On the one hand, I think a good social movie would be good. On the other hand, an animated movie would be very good. However, I don't want to waste our animated film slot because I do want to get Iron Giant in there.
Slot. We
gonna
want
be
to our
only-
live action film slot. That's been filmed many times.
That's
The
number
Incredibles.
355. Yeah. So maybe there's two: Incredibles and Iron Giant. I think something experimental. I think something more avant-garde, let's say, although that might be the wrong word, would be good. I was very into Kirk's movie, but I think for the sake of the podcast, for the sake of our growth, I'm gonna go
For
with.
the sake of Tony's safety.
I mean,
His safety.
No, it's not. It's nothing to do with that. For the sake, no, honestly, while I think the other one is more timely, I'm fascinated by the movie Kirk. I think in general, looking at the movies we've done over the course of the podcast, I think It's a Beautiful Day is the better choice. So that's the one I'm picking.
I appreciate it. Thank you for giving me a shot.
Yes.
I don't know how you guys will feel about the movie, but I'm excited to watch it again and to talk about it. So.
Okay, and with that, guys, that's the end of the podcast. Thank you for sticking with us these many long months. Thank you, Mom. Thank you, Dad, etc., etc. Let's all stick together.
I'll have what she's had.